Alex Ansary here. It is July 3rd, 2016. So the last video discussed solar flares, geomagnetic storms, and the human response. We see a rise in manufactured events, false flags, people being led into these controlled revolutions, these false revolutions. And so with that, I want to bring your attention to Burns, Oregon, which looks like perhaps a beautiful place to live off the grid, far from Portland, closer to Idaho. It has become ground zero for the quote-unquote militia, for the quote-unquote Patriot movement. Now, what I want to share with you is some things that have been on my mind all night long. And some nights I have a really hard time sleeping because of something that's on my mind. And it's something about the nighttime or the middle of the night where my consciousness seems to be flooded with the ideas that I need to share with you. Now, I recorded a video last week, but I didn't upload it. And these things tend to happen with me a lot when I feel passionate about something and I record something and I feel that for whatever reason it's taken away from my main content. I can't do that today. That video was about Pete Santilli, someone that I have been not watching as a viewer, and I certainly don't listen to him. But I have been very suspicious of this person, where he came from, how he's financed, how he has positioned himself. I don't quite want to say the number 2 slot under Alex Jones, another disinformation artist, which I have talked about recently. Pete Santilli is like this other flavor that has appeared out of the darkness, claims to be an ex-Marine. A couple years ago, said that Hillary Clinton should be shot in the vagina. This brought him a lot of popularity. And I thought at the time, oh, what a fucking idiot. Knowing that we live in a day and age where that type of a thing can really hurt you and get you put away. Well, since that time, we've seen massive growth of the Pete Santilli show and of other highly controversial actions where he is playing the role of the militia reporter, the people's reporter, the alternative to Alex Jones, with his own brand of attitude and spin, with a fairly unique radio voice. Narration voice. You know, I'm not even going to even try to describe it. But it's something for me that's always stood out about Pete Santilli, is that type of a manipulating voice that will pull in unsuspecting listeners into his web. And there's a lot of sadness that I feel for humanity right now. The amount of people that are falling for some of these deceptions. And we're going to talk about Burns, because Pete Santilli has worked in tandem with Cliven Bundy's sons. Pete Santilli also was instrumental in the amping up tensions at the Bundy Ranch situation. I know everybody just wants to blame the federal government, and I know everybody just wants to blame the militia when you're looking at these hipster writers in the city that love to laugh at anyone that stands up against the federal government, which is very sad. Because I stand with a lot of people that say this is the stuff that makes real patriots look like extremists. Because here in the situation in Burns, here's what you have. Let me break it down. You have people that are making videos like this one that was posted on Blaine Cooper's YouTube channel. And there's a number of really strange characters involved in this. And they're basically talking about coming to Burns, long story short, to defend this Hammond's family, which, according to reports right now, they're not involved in the standoff. They appreciate the fact that they have all this support, but it seems that they're a little bit thrown off by this. And so the Hammond family, I believe a father and son, they did several months in jail, which many people believe is unjust, for burning the grass on their property, which went beyond their property and onto BLM land. And a judge has ordered them to fulfill the rest of their sentence. And it's something ridiculous, like 5 years. Now, there's a lot of unjust things that are taking place in this country and have taken place. Things don't revolve all around the BLM. There seems to be a segment of the controlled opposition movement that is wanting to direct people's attention towards these BLM fights. And I'm wondering if they're prepping these patriots, so-called patriots, for a major conflict, a staged conflict. And as far as the Bundy situation, I've always believed that that was a setup to get people to come down there and then put them on the list or follow them home, if they were unable to get lone wolves, if you will, to fire the first shot. And so now you have all these people in Burns, and I've watched the videotapes of the town hall looking meeting where, you know, there's a few concerned members of the Burns community that are upset that these outsiders have come to their town to have a fight with the federal government. And a lot of these guys, if you look at Blaine Cooper, and you need to know who the main guys are. You need to know that there are main guys in this. They're involved in promotion, the promotion of this, that are working in tandem with others as a team. And so you have Blaine Cooper, you have Pete Santilli, and you have a few other followers of theirs. Either willing dupes, other men being affected by the solar flares. You have one guy that appears to be nearly crying in one video. He sounds like he's saying goodbye to his family. Now, there are a lot of Marines that have been severely fucked up by this government and by the military. Unfortunately, instead of those Marines, a lot of them being involved in worthwhile projects on a public level, you know, how many Adam Kokesh types are out there that are more real than Adam Kokesh? What I mean by that specifically, because it is early in the morning, good speakers, talk show hosts, YouTubers, radio hosts, people that are speaking the truth. Adam Kokesh is another person that has used the fact that he served this country and that he claims he's a non-statist to, are you ready for it? To promote this 2020 presidential run. And so we see different forms of narcissism in general within our population, of people thinking they're fit to lead, when in fact in some cases they're suffering from mental illness. In this case, you have a lot of Marines that have been really fucked up by the country and the wars, and they've been brainwashed themselves, and they've been led to believe that they went to the Middle East to fight for our freedoms. A lot of these Marines never woke up that 9/11 was a fraud, and some of them did, only to fall back into this matrix of saying that all Muslims are this or that, or that this is about a war with Islam. Pete Santilli does that, even though he attacks Alex Jones, and I think creates straw man arguments or uses straw man arguments about Alex Jones. He doesn't actually expose Alex Jones for what he's actually doing to fan the flames of racial tension and paranoia within this country. Who's a Muslim? Who's a Muslim? Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell a non-Aryan in our midst, or fully Aryan. It seems that there is this obsession with pure blood. You'll even hear Alex Jones himself scream occasionally that he's a pure pedigree when describing his Christian belief system. I don't know what that has to do with a pedigree. So, I and you and others are seeing some really strange behavior out of a number of people in the alternative media that have amassed a fairly large audience. Now, hard work can get you a certain amount of success in the alternative media. Just like, going to a gym and working out and eating healthy. You can also do drugs and take steroids and have results, but that would bring you serious health problems and consequences. So, Pete Santilli, Alex Jones, and a few others seem to have been given that boost. Pete Santilli in particular, he's at all these major events that have been considered suspicious to begin with. The promotion of said events, and supposedly he was visited by Secret Service for saying shoot Hillary Clinton in the vagina, but he has gone on to say other crazy, insightful things. And what's more interesting about this is that Pete Santilli, of all people, as if he's some sort of hero or leader, Pete Santilli becomes a major story last week when he's pulled over by the police because his name and car happened to be on the terror watch list. Now, Pete Santilli was pretty relaxed about the whole thing, and I was wondering several things. Whether this was something that was staged to make Pete Santilli look like a victim, like the federal government was after him. Which I don't really see great evidence that the feds are after Pete Santilli. Right now, I need to say what I did not upload in that video that I recorded last week. And that is that Pete Santilli, more than likely, may be a federal agent. In a world where so many people just throw out that allegation, I'm giving you a few of the many reasons why that may be. But I want you to take note of all the other talk show hosts that are not on the terror watch list. When you think about how somebody could use certain events to martyr themselves, to make it look like they are the ultimate enemy of the federal government, to better market themselves to people that are at odds with the tyrannical federal government. I'm not standing behind the government. It's a matter of how we deal with the problem. Nor am I telling you to go to vote to get involved in the political system. What we need to do is get outside the system, start living outside the system, and start working together so we have property rights when we are in those areas where we're trying to live off the grid outside the system. And yes, colonies of liberty, the off the grid freedom movement, I see this as one of many solutions to get away from a lot of these problems in the city. This is the solution for a lot of us, to opt out from the madness, to not get further involved in it, but to opt out from the madness. Now, I'm going to be bringing up Costilla County in brief in just a few minutes, but let me complete this thought. So, Pete Santilli has had certain associations that you should know about. You should know the name Mark Keesler. Mark Keesler went on the Alan Colmes show several years ago, and he talked about using his position as a disgruntled police chief on the East Coast. He was fired for some inflammatory videos screaming, "Libtard this, here are my guns, come and take them." They're playing that archetype of the pro-Second Amendment individual. Mark Keesler was working for the FBI. to turn in extremist types that would contact him. And want to help him or support him. And I was aware of who this guy was when he was on the scene, and people were, oh, look at Mark Keesler, and I'm going to talk more about that as well, how people are falling for this monkey man bullshit, which is very sad to see, because there is enough information out there that humans should be more intelligent than whatever it is that I'm seeing at the moment. These different forms of psychosis, these different forms of mental illness, bipolar tendencies. And it's also very sad to know that there is a whole world of research, which I'm involved in, but it started before I was born. In particular by just a few individuals, Alexander Chavinsky of Russia of 1918, how the solar flares and geomagnetic storms are linked to cycles of war and peace, civil unrest, protests, and I would even say controlled revolutions and movements that go nowhere. I don't know what it is about the sun that's difficult for today's man, today's woman to understand. The sun just doesn't warm you up. It also affects you on a behavior level. Because the sun can fill your body with extra energy, extra testosterone. So when I watch those videos from the Pete Santilli channel, again, Pete Santilli promoting Mark Keesler, the FBI informant, who turned in people, extremists, that contacted him saying that they wanted to help him. He was a honeypot. And who was his biggest cheerleader? Who was his biggest promoter? It was Pete Santilli. Pete Santilli. Pete Santilli. The Pete Santilli Show. And I have scratched my head and gone, what the fuck is wrong with people? Situation is people like abusers. People like dominators. There are women out there that are actually, well, I don't like Hillary Clinton, so I think it's okay to say, shoot her in the vagina. I also want to say on a side note, if you criticize any Republican or Democrat, you're considered to be on the other political party, or a Democrat or a Republican. Someone actually called me a Obama Kool-Aid drinker in the comment section. These are people that comment on the Alex Jones Deception series. The people that comment and troll and are angry don't take the time to see that I've been involved in the alternative media for many, many years. And so I do want to say this before going further, because there's so much I'm trying to share with you right now. Since I got involved in 2004, I started doing my own show in 2005, Access TV, Outside the Box TV. I've never seen deceptions as great as this. I've never seen as many people just following blindly. And we're talking about people that claim that they're awake to the New World Order. We're talking about people that are awake to the fact that the federal government is criminal. And they are following agent provocateurs in ways that I have never seen before. Alex Jones is one side of the coin. Pete Santilli is another side of the coin. And so I really wanted to share with you this detail of the Burns, Oregon situation. Most articles won't start where I just did, but you should know the players involved in this, the faces, and you're going to have random men. Now take a look at the videos from Pete Santilli. A lot of the men and women there, they look broken. They look broken. They look like they're being affected by the solar flares. They're pacing back and forth. They've now taken over a government building. And also pay attention to the incredibly poor journalism. Where are the pictures of this building? Is it really that hard? Or are you just going to show me a picture of a guy holding a gun from like last week? Where is the actual live reporting from outside the building that the militia, which is more of a general term, it's not a particular organization. Like the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia. So now the militia takes over a federal building, a federal government building. And so this is coming at a time where Obama is proposing some executive action on gun control. It is his last year in office. The presidents are controlled. The next president will be selected, not elected. But again, we're in a day and age where these are Trump people. These are people that will go out and shoot the Koran and put it on YouTube. Back to Blaine Cooper and some of the people he's promoting on his channel. People talking about, going to Burns, Oregon, and they may not live through this. They're saying goodbye to their family. They build themselves up saying how great they are. That they served in the military, that they have a family, that they love their family, and they turn around and act like they're going to die. And they say goodbye to their family. And they explain to their daughter that their father has to do what's right. Bull fucking shit. What about the veteran in Costilla County that I stayed with? No one came to his aid. They just kicked him off his land. He owned that land. He owned that land. He didn't burn anything. He didn't have any cattle. Maybe that's the problem. He didn't have any cattle. You know what these so-called militia members are doing is derailing any real activism that should be taking place around ranchers regarding land grabs. So what's the situation going to be when America is invaded by foreign troops or Chinese troops to occupy land they already own? Are there going to be people setting other Americans up for a fight, for a slaughter, telling them to go down and fight for this BLM land and fight for that BLM land and in particular areas where there's going to be an army waiting to meet them, waiting to drone them, waiting to drop some sort of explosive device over a building, as they call those groups terrorists, and they use that threat of terrorism to further invade the country? You might want to look at China's new anti-terrorism legislation. They have literally put it down on paper. Again, Alex Jones makes our own government to be the worst of the worst. He'll say, Hitler and Stalin never had the guts to put this on paper. They just did it. He'll just repeat that. Well, China put this on paper. That they will use the threat of terrorism. The word is terrorism, not ISIS. Terrorism, domestic terrorism, to go anywhere in the world. Okay, so there are some people, like Gary Franchi and others, that do some reporting on China, and yet they're still in this paradigm when they should know better, based on prior research that they should have done when they were claiming that they were awake. Now you see these people on the Trump train. Now you see these people, because they've been abused and they've been labeled and they've been oppressed. Oh yeah, this makes perfect sense. Just blame a Muslim. Let's play the just blame a Muslim game. And so you look at some of the videos and some of the statements of some of these militia members in Burns, Oregon. These people are freaked out, thinking that Islam is invading America. These aren't regular patriots. These aren't regular militia people. But on that note, many people in that militia movement, patriot movement, that are not thinking for themselves, but are literally taking talking points from the media and funneling that in through their consciousness. There's a lot of broken ex-military men out there and so-called survivalists that are not doing very well upstairs. You'll notice some of the problems with obesity and lack of physical fitness. Their bodies and minds and spirits are falling apart, as well as many women in our culture. Take a look at the videos by Pete Santilli, the Pete Santilli Show on YouTube, to get an idea of the people that came down there. And a lot of them don't look like they're evil people. They look like they are having a mental health crisis, a few of them, thinking that this is the situation for them to put their life on the line. And they're being told this by other people, that this is it. And then other people see this on the internet. And people were commenting last night. There was this one older deranged woman who's been kind of trolling me and stalking me. And finally I had to put a block to her yesterday. But she was showing heavy signs of mental illness around the period of the solar flares. So people don't even respect my research and the fact that there is a trend with people losing it if they're out of balance when we have these geomagnetic storms. By the way, there's another one coming in today and tomorrow. So all that is going to do is boost all that energy in that area in Burns, Oregon, affecting those men that are allegedly holding down the fort, if you will. The reports are that they've taken over a federal building, and today's the day that some pictures should emerge on the internet. I'm not alleging that this is a fake incident, but then again, I can't say that it's not a fake incident. But I can say it's poor journalism on the part of writers everywhere locally that may be traveling there if they haven't been able to take a picture of the area involved. I've seen the peaceful protest video over and over and over again. Where is the video of this federal building being taken over by, and I quote, in quote, a splinter group? So, like protests in the major cities with anarchists and black bloc and those types, we have the splinter group going off and, busting a Starbucks window. And in some cases, those have been agent provocateurs. And in the cases, those have been people that say, hey, breaking things owned by corporations is the only way you take down the system, which isn't true. They just get another window and enact another police state law. I mean, you're dealing with some really dumb Americans right now that can be led by candy. They can be led by hot dogs. And if you're not down with suicidal behavior, you're not a patriot. So, listen. My advice is that a lot of these groups are dangerous. And a lot of these groups can get you labeled as a white supremacist, and I learned that by just filming a few things in Costilla County. And I also learned that while it wasn't fair for, certain people to attack me in San Luis for coming to the aid of the off-the-gridders, I do understand where they were coming from. I do understand their point. I do see that there is a rise in white supremacy in this country. And I do see how many white people that aren't racist are so wrapped up with being white as their identity that they are not able, they will not allow their brain to see things from another perspective. And it is unfortunate. And a segment of white America is very defensive about this and is in denial. So I would consider stepping away from a lot of these deranged ex-military survivalist types, so-called patriots. Stay away from the 3%ers. I'm going to be quick on this and get back to the main points. You have the ability to go and live off the grid if you're willing to rough it, whether you're in your vehicle or you're in your RV or you're in your van or whatever, or you're building something, whatever. The point is, cities are becoming less safe. And a lot of these alternative media people are still living in these major cities. And they're still working for the system in some way, shape, or form. And I don't want to make allegations that, well, that person's a Fed and that person's a Fed, because a lot of people just do that for sport. Period. However, looking at the behavior of Pete Santilli and the amount of people that he has rallied to a lot of these false causes that could have easily led to people getting killed. These are traps for a lot of the men out there and women that think that coming up to the face of the federal government on its own turf in these areas are the wars that need to be fought. There are situations where people need to show up and actually say what you're doing is illegal, and we need to put a stop to it. And there's ways that people can do that peacefully by being there physically, but most of all on the internet. I'm going to try to be brief. This is an early morning podcast, but I have to get this out. I am exploding like a solar flare with insight and knowledge, and I'm also in pain that I'm not able to warn people. I feel like I'm speaking only to myself. Or I am sharing with you, the audience, what's going on, but my voice isn't getting out to those that need to be warned to stay away from this particular situation. They are baiting people down to this situation, where in other situations, if people were to show up at a town hall, they might be providing some help. But going the militia way, the way that they are promoting the militia, and that includes people like Mark Kornke. This guy got out of prison years ago. I didn't realize we were still Facebook friends. This guy was commenting some really mentally ill stuff on my page. Some sort of a statement about not pissing one's pants, being a man and getting ready for it, forming your own militia. I mean, he went on a psychobabble rant. It breaks my heart to see people that I'd like to be able to reach with content and information, to see them misled down these dark roads, to see conspiracy research being taken in a certain direction by certain people that are leading voices. Tell you what, David Icke's been real quiet about these local disturbances in the alternative media. David Icke, like others, it's easy for him just to blame what he calls or believes is at the top of the pyramid. But instead of keeping people accountable, no, let's just blame it on the reptilians. Let's just blame it on Obama and the White House. Yes. Let's go from the big picture, David Icke, to just blaming this on invisible empires, invisible enemies. It is a real empire. I say that loosely. But we need to keep each other accountable on a basic level. And right now, the greatest disturbances taking place, as far as disinformation happens to be concerned, are coming from people like Alex Jones and Pete Santilli and others. Briefly on Alex Jones, he has made false claims that assassins are out to kill him, and that a police officer saved his life in California. Not with Alex there, though. He doesn't really provide any facts in a rant that goes on only in a few minutes, and hardly any of his viewers on YouTube believe a damn thing that he is saying about a police officer being killed trying to protect Alex Jones. Mike Adams, who used to work with Alex Jones or for Alex Jones at the InfoWars studio, wrote on naturalnews.com, which is his website, that this story is completely fabricated, and a former Alex Jones guest by the name of Kurt Haskell did a little research and found out that supposed incident of the supposed assassin being shot, get this, took place 4 years ago in 2011. I guess that'd be 5 years ago. The point is, and it happened in Oregon, not California. The point is, Alex Jones will just go out and lie to his audience now openly and say that Islam is the number one threat. So Alex Jones has unleashed one of the greatest deceptions of his career. Pete Santilli has pretended to be an Alex Jones critic, keeping the conversation on Stratford, which in a way, since he's only really covered that, really kind of almost debunks the possibility that that particular element may not be the most significant. Meanwhile, is Pete Santilli talking about Alex Jones and the whole Islamophobia situation, although it's much worse, because we live in a day and age where a Sikh or a Brazilian or a Hispanic could be confused for a Middle Eastern person. When it comes to Islam, Islam is a religion, not a race. But people are getting things mixed up. There are Americans that say Islam is not a race to say, hey, we're not judging races, we're just judging Islam. But how do you know if someone's a Muslim or not? A lot of people are making these judgment calls based on appearance, based on beards, based on last names. And yet, this segment of white America will not take accountability for that. They will not take accountability for that. They will not acknowledge that we are seeing a rise in white supremacy and neo-Nazi attacks on non-whites in this country. And yet we have a huge segment of white America that will not look at this, just like they will not look at past crimes. This channel also forecasts the path to World War III. WorldWar0.com is one of my many websites, and a lot of very important data about the Chinese military and their agreements with the United States. Joint response drill. Yeah, China was in Hawaii recently. China was in Seattle recently as well. These are not news topicals on the table for a lot of these disgruntled anti-government folks. They have been led into Obama worship. Putin worship, which is the new version. Go anybody but Bush. They gave us Obama. Anybody but Obama, they're prepping us for Trump, who likes Putin, and Putin likes Trump. It's like we're being led in this brave new world order, and people that have been against tyrannical controllers for years and dictatorships, the idea of a one world order system, they're now being taught and duped into thinking that what's coming out of Russia and China will be a good thing, when they have control over the world order coming out of the East. Somehow they think that, these Americans think that the U.S. military and what our government has done is the only threat. Or the only acts of evil of the last century. And history shows us that there is a torch of imperialism that is handed from empire to empire. And for years, I've been tracking and watching this handing off of the baton to Russia and China as the U.S. self-destructs. America's been used to destroy America, and instead of quote-unquote patriots coming together, or, people of morale, people with common sense coming to the aid of the people of Costilla County in southern Colorado when the local government pushed people off their land, how could that have been better? A better response. We saw a lot of selfish activity on the part of locals, on the part of the person that started the SLV Just Us group. We saw people for their own entertainment use that group to attack others instead of the local residents and the new residents and the older white residents and the older Hispanic residents using the internet to really talk to each other for the first time instead of attack each other over who's pooping in what container, but actually get to know each other. But instead they let people like Faye Medina, which I haven't mentioned her name too many times. She's a demon-possessed woman who lives in Colorado Springs, that used all of her available time, so I don't know whether she's a stay-at-home home welfare mom or whatnot, or she's a heir of a royal family to where people just pay her bills. But this person stayed on that Facebook group all the time to troll and attack the white new residents. So I want you to know, I brought attention to white Americans that owned their land being pushed off their land by a corrupt, local, La Raza-leaning Spanish government. Some say Mexican. I have come to realize they really hate Mexicans and would rather claim a Spanish lineage. Because if you confuse Mexican and Spanish to the locals, and I realized that when I confused Mexican for Spanish on the 9th of September in the year 2015, I saw that hatred of themselves and other Hispanics just come out after that day. And so I've seen different forms of racism that have just shocked me. And so this world right now is affected by all this unrest. And if you listen to my one of my more recent podcasts on this YouTube channel, you're going to hear my dialogue about the sun and its links to civil unrest, false flag events, people losing it, bipolar activity, mental illness. And so it's easy for people to succumb to the illusions of separation and not see the big picture, to become cognitively impaired and easily led. And I saw people in Costilla County easily led, by the way, by a Rodger Marsh who wanted to start his own militia. He was using the sovereign phrase. He was using common law. Also, Pete Santilli. He is actually like reading a long, long letter about common law, and it sounded like Bruce Doucette speaking, the supposed judge who was going to come to Costilla County. I only let Bruce Doucette hang out in one of my Facebook groups to see how crazy he was. Give him enough rope to hang himself. Now he hardly posts. So we were never friends. But he tried to say, hey, I didn't know Rodger at all. That he was crazy, that he was a crazy militia type. He wanted to have a war. And so I really want to wrap up this video. It's going on longer than it should. But I have a lot of explosive ideas. I like to talk early in the morning. And I spend a lot of time alone. So I'm going to talk with you as if we're having coffee at the coffee shop. But I really need to get my coffee. It's 8:12 already. It's a tragedy. There is a purpose for armed defense. There is a purpose for a militia. There is a purpose for a lot of these things down the line. Unfortunately, a lot of these men and their wives have shown themselves to be less than intelligent, to be easily baited into racial conflict. And it's about 150 that showed up in Burns, Oregon. So that, that's not a sign of a huge success. It's a sign of success, I suppose, on the part of Pete Santilli and a few others that have enough reach to, attract those loose cannons for what they're calling the Bundy 2.0 to barricade themselves into a building to later be surrounded by SWAT team and starved out, their power cut off. Unless, of course, their power isn't cut off. And that's going to be interesting to see how this develops in the next couple of days. What happens? What really happens? And I want you to pay attention to all these people that are, hooping and hollering and getting all pumped up by the solar flares and the geomagnetic storms and, this whole, this is revolution, this is revolution, what I'm seeing now with Costilla County and the failure of not only the off-the-grid residents to defend themselves, but the lack of support from the nation, from the nation's observers, from other off-the-gridders. We're a nation of people where it's every man, woman, and child out for themselves. It really is like that. Every now and then you'll see moments, though, where it seems like the people are coming together. People are coming together. Sometimes it's simply just another biological response to the increase in solar activity. Once things calm down and they go home. Or for the off-the-gridders, after the Planning Commission, people stopped going down to the county commissioner meeting. People stopped speaking for their 3 minutes. People stopped doing anything. Repeat, people stopped doing anything. Repeat, people stopped doing anything. Repeat, people stopped doing anything. Repeat. I mean, frankly, at this point, I think a lot of people that are drawn out here to Colorado, Costilla County, to live off the grid in the Rio Grande Ranchos. A lot of these people seem to be partially mentally handicapped or physically handicapped. And some of the veterans that have been put into these wars and traumatized, they're ready to die. And they have no idea how they're affected by the sun. They have no idea how their own bipolar tendencies can go off the hook. And so for me, and I'm gonna try to close here, I've gone through a lot of pain in my personal life, feeling like I've discovered an amazing trend that could really help people understand what's going on, and how there's even a strategy to when false flags appear, to dupe us into war, to defensive action, to combat, to these manufactured wars. And yet here are all these men acting like they don't understand patterns, like they have no pattern recognition. Here you have all these men, hardly any of them look like they can actually fight with their fists, relying on their guns. There's a big movement in this country. Don't know how to fight with your fists, but jack off your gun. Everything about your gun. Everything about fear, all the time. Fear. I mean, this is not a faith-filled society. I don't know what book you're reading out of. It doesn't matter how religious someone is. That is not the same. That is not the same as having faith in a creator. When you have faith in God, when you have faith in the creator, you don't succumb to warmongering and preparing for the clash of civilizations, because you know that the creator will work certain things out. You know that it is good to come to someone's aid when they want your aid. And the Hammonds are on their way to prison. They decided they did not want to be a part of this militia. I think the older one was a little disturbed by some of this. You can see it in his eyes. You can see this crowd, like, hey, Führer, our leader, hey. I mean, you gotta be like, whoa, this is kind of weird. And then again, you look at Pete Santilli, and he's constantly at all these events, and he was just pulled over for being on the terror watch list, like, a couple weeks ago. So, dude, you don't think you're gonna, thank your lucky stars that you were, that it wasn't any worse? And what about that gun charge? Don't you have court in that same area? Or you have some sort of special privilege where you don't have to stay in that area of Cincinnati, Ohio. You can just go to Burns, Oregon. Pete Santilli with a special privilege. Most people wouldn't have that right to continue to travel once they get pulled into the criminal justice system. And by the way, it was a firearm. It was unregistered. That's why he has court. And so let's monitor what happens from here on out. I may do a follow-up. But please check out some of my work on solar flares and the cycles of war. I'm Alex Hansery for January 3rd, 2016.